Okay, guys, what do you get when a golf player, a freelance journalist, and an ex-gifted student turn director walk into a TV studio? I'll give you a second, think about it. You got your answer? Okay, you get SportsLine. And don't worry, Isaiah's still here too. We just keep him in the basement and bring him out when we need graphics made. Hello, I'm Siobhan Nolan.
And I'm Libby Gilliland. Since you might not be familiar with me yet, let's play Two Truths and a Lie to get to know me better. Here we go. I play golf for Lasalle, I can crochet, and I co-host SportsLine. Which is the lie? Stick around until the end of the episode to find out. You're watching Lasalle TV's home for Explorer Athletics, SportsLine.
Welcome to SportsLine. We've got basketball, we've got track and field, we've got swimming and diving, we've got interviews with LaSalle alumni authors who write books about basketball players that almost came to LaSalle. Buckle up, Explorers. Our first episode of 2022 is going to be a doozy.
And later, it seems like just yesterday our winter sports season began. But it's time to look ahead to the spring season just around the corner. Look no further for your spring sport previews.
But first, let's take a look at our SportsLine top 3.
Number 1, sophomore Liam Mcfadden was named NovaCare Student Athlete of the Week after his performance in a meet against Fordham. Mcfadden earned 2 individual wins in the 200 butterfly and the 100 butterfly. In the 200, he easily dusted the field, coming in first 4 seconds in front of the next competitor. Then in the 100, Mcfadden clutched up and took first by less than a second. To hear more about the meet against Fordham, stick around for recaps.
Number 2. Earlier this week, both men's and women's swim teams were honored by the CSCAA for their work in the classroom. Over the fall semester, the women's team maintained a GPA of 3.63, while the men's team had a GPA of 3.35. The CSCAA is the nation's first organization of college coaches after being founded in 1922. They focus on the sport of swimming and diving with coaches at the epicenter of leadership, advocacy, and professional development.
Number 3, LaSalle Water Polo picked to place third in the preseason coaches poll. The Explorers received 60 votes, being led only by Marist and Wagner, who each got 71. The placement comes after a stellar 2021 season, which saw the Explorers go 11-5 and reach the championship semifinals before losing to a double overtime match to Marist. In other water polo news, transfer grad Kayla Spurl named co-player of the year, also being placed on the preseason All-MAC team. Hyam, daughter of head coach Tom Hyam, is a transfer from Bucknell who had been named honorable mention All-American twice in her career.
So we've got some really good preseason action happening with women's water polo. It's really interesting to see the coach's daughter be named to the team. So I guess we'll see if they can go on a better run this season, maybe even win the championship since they came so close last season. So definitely fingers crossed for that. And then swimming and diving, against Fordham, it's great to see that they're finally getting some wins, and they've kind of struggled this season, but it's good to get that, especially against an A10 competitor.
Yeah, we got a lot of great names in that lineup, and everybody's performing well. It's good to see everybody contributing. It's good for team dynamic, just that everybody's performing well, and that 4x4 team doing as well as they can is really great.
Mm-hmm. And then we have a lot of great GPA academic performances too. All the teams are coming out with their GPA things for the fall semester. Everyone's kind of bragging about how LaSalle's really good with academics and athletics. So it seems like not just swimming and diving, but we have men's soccer, women's soccer, track and field. They've all had really impressive GPA standings. So it's great to see that LaSalle student athletes are doing well on both the student and the athletes.
Yeah, it shows a lot about not only the school, but the teams themselves, the coaches, everybody contributing. Freshmen still have to go to study hall, and it shows that they're doing that. And that's important. Being an athlete myself, I understand how hard it is to manage the academics and the athletics, and to show that team after team, it's not just one team, it's not just one person. Getting a team GPA is really hard to do. And they're doing incredible with that. It's cool to see.
Exactly. Getting on those averages, close to 3.5, just in that range, it's really great to see that, they take their studies very seriously, because I know especially with a lot of international students, they like coming to Lasalle because you get the education and the athletics all in one. So it's really great to see that they're not taking advantage of being an athlete, more just they're very focused on both sides of the student athlete title.
Yeah, and I will say LaSalle has great resources for all of the athletes and regular students too. They're reaching out all the time, trying to get them to go to study hall, get them extra help that they need, and it goes a long way, and you can see it in the numbers, and our teams are just really doing incredible.
Especially considering that a lot of, athletes, some people say, oh, they take the easy majors, whatever, but they're nursing majors, they're STEM majors, so that makes it even more impressive to see all these really high GPAs. So we just really can't commend our student athletes enough for, winning games and also winning in the classroom as well. And that's it for top 3. Now let's see how our teams did in this week's recaps. Men's basketball took on UMass at Tom Gola Arena on Wednesday night, where they got off to a near-perfect start. The Explorers were able to employ 3 different scorers to knock down 3 of their first 4 attempts from the three-point line, jumping out to an early 9-4 lead. UMass closed this gap to 1 point, but an 8-0 run led by Deshaun Shepard put the Explorers back up to a comfortable 19-10 lead. The Minutemen came back to claim a narrow 28-27 advantage, but Jack Clark's 10th point of the first half put LaSalle back on top. Josh Nickelberry and Anwar Gill ensured that the Explorers would go into halftime on top, capping off the first half with a 42-32 scoreline. LaSalle's offense didn't slow down in the second half, extending their lead to 16 points early on. However, a 13-0 run from UMass put the deficit back into single digits. The Minutemen would then regain their lead 64-62, but Clark's 4-point run put the Explorers level at 71 with just over a minute remaining in the game. Unfortunately, a victory wasn't in the cards for LaSalle, as UMass scored 6 more points to grab a 77-71 win.
Women's basketball traveled to New York Wednesday night to take on A10 opponent St. Bonaventure. The Explorers took an early 7-0 lead that was quickly halted by a 20-point run by St. Bonaventure, leading to a 23-13 lead at the end of the first quarter. The Explorers cut the lead to 1 point to halftime, and they continued to perform, taking a 2-point lead going into the fourth quarter. Unfortunately, they couldn't hold on, and they fell to the Bonnies 67-51. Kayla Spurl led the team with 22 points, shooting 9 of 15 from the field and 3 from 8 from three-point range. As of now, LaSalle stands at 11-7 for the season and 4-2 in the A10. The Explorers will be back on the court on February 2nd to take on Duquesne.
The track and field team traveled to Staten Island for the Penn Select, where both the men and women's team finished with top 10 spots. On the men's side, redshirt senior Dennis Manier picked up right where he left off last season, taking gold in the high jump with a mark of 2.05 meters, which was nearly 2 inches higher than the runner-up. Senior Ibrahim Kadir took home bronze in the 3,000 meter, clocking in at 8 minutes and 17 seconds. And to wrap up the men's side, sophomore Ben Wolf added 2 points to the Explorers total in the triple jump finals, earning a mark of 12.27 meters. The team took an 8th place finish with a total of 21 points. As for the women, the Mancini trio of Elle, Liz, and Christine all earned top spots, with Elle taking the top spot in the 3,000 meter. Following right behind was Christine, taking the 2nd place spot. Liz Mancini added 4 points to the Explorer total, taking 4th place in the mile with a time of 4 minutes and 47 seconds. Freshman Arongi Fashina earned a 3rd place finish in the 60-meter final, and junior Olabisi Adams claimed silver in the long jump finals. The group effort pushed the women's team to a 5th place finish with a score of 38 points.
Swimming and diving celebrated their senior day this past weekend with an exciting win over A10 rival Fordham. On the men's side, the 200-yard medley relay team, consisting of Trenton Burr, Jason Rosales, Zachary Wolbert, and Zach Miller, took 1st place for the first win of the day. This was followed by Jake Kramer, who finished 1st in both the 500 and 1,000-yard freestyle. Liam Mcfadden took the top spot in the 100-yard and 200-yard butterfly events, while Wolbert collected the gold in the 200-yard IM and the 200-yard freestyle. Burr was 1st in the 100-yard backstroke, while Rosales was 1st in the 100-yard breaststroke. For diving, Sam Henninger and Steven DeSala took the top 2 spots in both diving events. For the women, Annie Mosner finished 1st in the 1,000-yard freestyle, while fellow senior Sarah Rossetto was victorious in the 200-yard freestyle. top finisher for the 200-yard butterfly, marking her second consecutive win in that event. For the cherry on top, senior Phoebe Shia was first in her 3-meter diving event.
So swimming and diving, a lot of first place finishes there, which we love to see, especially with the men's side. And it's even great to see that it was their senior day, and a lot of those seniors did get those gold medal finishes. So definitely big ups to swimming and diving for getting that against Fordham.
Yeah, again, big senior day. That's always the biggest event, no matter who you're facing.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to perform on that day, and it's really cool to see that all the seniors did really well, and the team itself did well to take over that 8-10 opponent.
And then track and field, I don't know how they do it. I always see them outside running even when it's frigid out, you know, under 20 degrees. So it's great to see that they're getting warmed up, no pun intended, and that they're kind of, you know, getting their legs back under them, especially after the cross country season. So I think that we'll definitely see better results that we're more used to them seeing, but, you know, definitely not bad finishes for them at all.
No, I mean, we always see them performing well, and they continue to do that. Again, they're always running when it's cold, something I could never do.
Yeah,
so very impressive for them. Great to see a good performance again.
Yeah, and it's not, you know, a winter recap without talking about basketball. And, you know, it's really interesting. We were talking about this before the show, is kind of the gap between the men's and women's right now. The women are doing significantly better. You know, a loss against St. Bonaventure is not the result that we wanted to see, but they've been doing really well so far. But the men are now on a 3-game losing streak after blowing a 16-point lead against UMass, which, I'm sorry, but when you're playing D1 basketball with this group of players, that's just not an acceptable performance.
No, it's not. And you got to look at how they've been playing this year, and it's just disappointment after disappointment.
It really is.
They're not a bad team. They they can't finish out games. They're giving away big leads, and you can't do that at this point. In the season, you have to be at your best, and they're not. And it's sad to watch, but the reality of it is they need to get back and get in the gym and do better next year.
Exactly. And then you have, you know, players on the women's team like Kayla Spurl. She's having such a great year this year, 22 points. The men aren't putting up numbers like that. And, you know, we're seeing Claire and Amy Jacobs getting back into it, Molly Massantonio getting into it too. Jay Haynes is also having a great year. They're having so many great individual players, but they're also playing like a team. And the men, they do have those great individual performances, but very rarely do they come together and play together. It's always a couple of stars, and then everyone else is just kind of following in that, which, not that I'm, you know, the world's greatest expert on basketball, but obviously that is not how you put together a winning season.
Yeah. Kayla Spurl, we keep seeing her name, and she's still performing well.
Absolutely.
It's incredible. And like you said, this team is playing like a team. You can see it when you watch them. They're just better than the men.
I mean, the numbers don't lie. You really can't argue with those statistics. So although the men's program gets a lot of the hype and they get a lot of the fans at the games, they're not the ones getting the results. So definitely go check out your women next game that they play. And we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, Mike Cielski takes us through the process of writing his new book, The Rise, Kobe Bryant and the Pursuit of Immortality. Stay tuned.
Those were the days. We'd cruise down drags with our favorite bands. And every night, we had standing dates with the same friends. We hustled, we bumped, we bus stopped, and we smoked all the time. If that was you then, get your lungs screened now. Visit screenyourlungs.org today.
Using meth taught me everything about freedom, only not like you think. It taught me how easy it is to lose your freedom, how meth can take control until you find yourself doing whatever meth tells you to do. Before you get there, while you still can, take a stand for yourself. If you feel yourself losing your freedom to meth, ask for help. Accept the help. It's worth it. You have the power to be truly free and be the person you want to be. I know. I'm Jan, and I'm free from meth.
If you or someone you know is struggling with meth, call 1-800-662-HELP for 24-hour free and confidential treatment referral. Learn more at samhsa.gov/meth.
Welcome back. Lasalle alumnus Mike Cielski recently came out with a new book about Kobe Bryant, focusing on Kobe's early life and how that shaped the legend we grew to admire. Take a look. Hello, I'm Siobhan Nolan here with Mike Cielski, who's promoting his new book, The Rise, Kobe Bryant and the Pursuit of Immortality, here at Lasalle. So Mike, I just want to ask you first, why did you choose Kobe to write this entire book about?
I always found him a really fascinating figure, Siobhan. Very complex guy. Had a lot of incredible qualities, had a lot of qualities that you wouldn't necessarily want your son or daughter to emulate. I thought there was a lot there, and I thought that the early part of his life was a subject that hadn't really been explored in the kind of depth that it should have been, and I thought that I could tell that story really well.
And then, you know, Kobe is this mythical figure. You explained in your discussion earlier that he's very calculated. He kept his cards very close to the vest. So was that daunting to try and dig deeper into his personal life when he kind of made it very clear that he didn't like to focus on his past so much as who he was after he turned pro?
Well, the advantage I had was I got my hands on these audio tapes that no one had ever heard before from Kobe. So by being able to listen to them and extract from them what I needed for the book, I really got a really cool and keen insight into what Kobe was thinking back then. I didn't have to ask him when he was 39, 40 years old. I had his thoughts on tape from when he was 17, 18, 19. So that made it a little bit easier. Your point is right on about him and what he was like as a full-grown adult, but at 17 or 18, I could say for certain I knew what he was thinking because his thoughts were there on tape.
And then, is it difficult to write a book about Kobe when he wasn't there for you to ask or reference himself? I know that we said, you know, he was very calculated, you know, in his later life, but did you ever feel like you were missing something because he wasn't there to give his own thoughts on the subject matter?
I think you always feel that way anytime you take on a lengthy, in-depth writing project in which you can't speak directly to the subject. You're always going to feel like, boy, I hope I'm not missing anything, or boy, I wish I could just call him up or meet him for coffee or something like that and talk to him. But as I said, the advantage of the tapes, the advantage of having people who were close to him when he was in high school being willing to help me and talk to me about him really allowed the project to come together.
And then it's very interesting how you focused a lot on Joe Bryant and his connection to Lasalle and Kobe's connection to Lasalle, because as I was saying to Ray earlier, I was a freshman in 2019. I wasn't aware of that until he died and they were talking about it. So what inspired you to really put an emphasis on that connection to Lasalle and the Philadelphia basketball circuit?
Well, it was so much a part of Kobe's life at that time. You know, Joe was an incredible player here for the few years that he was here. And if you're going to write any kind of biography about an important, you know, a socially significant figure such as Kobe Bryant, you've got to get into his family life and his family history. And since Joe had that history with LaSalle, and since Kobe had a history with LaSalle, where for a couple years he considered coming here to play, it made sense to me to try to incorporate that into the narrative of the book.
And then, you know, Kobe was such a complicated figure. You know, he had his good moments, he had his bad moments. So you explained that you didn't want to take too emotional of a stance, even though many people have emotional reactions to Kobe as a person. So is that difficult to do when you're writing a book, to not really have an opinion per se on the person you're writing about?
I don't find it that difficult. I've been doing this long enough that I'm able to take a step back and kind of divorce myself from whatever my personal feelings are about a figure. Now, the irony of that is, in my job at the Inquirer, I'm often asked to weigh in and give my opinion on sports-related subjects. That's what a columnist does. But when it came to telling Kobe's story, I just wanted to render it in all its dimensions as best as I could, so that I didn't want to turn anyone off who either loved him and admired him, or anyone who thought he's not worthy of admiration. I wanted anybody, no matter what they felt about him, to be able to read this book and come away from it knowing him a little bit better.
And so was that kind of your main purpose, that you wanted the main takeaway to be just giving Kobe a bit more context, because he tried so hard to be this mythical figure, this god of sorts. So did you want to humanize him, or was that your main takeaway from writing this?
Yeah, absolutely. I was fascinated by him as a teenager and that stage of his life. And my goal in writing the book was really to have somebody pick it up now, pick it up 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and be able to say, okay, I read The Rise, and now I understand Kobe Bryant better. Everything that he was as a basketball star and as a man, you could see traces of it in who he was as a teenager.
Well, you guys can go pick up The Rise, Kobe Bryant and the Pursuit of Immortality. The book is out now, so thank you, Mike, and best of luck in your future writing endeavors.
Thanks so much, Mom.
Take one last break, but when we come back, we have your previews of all the upcoming LaSalle spring sports.
Exposure to blue light can mess with your sleep and memory cycle, so make sure you limit your screen time at least 2 hours before you go to bed.
It may still be freezing outside, but spring sports are right around the corner, so let's take a look ahead and preview the spring season. So track has already kind of gotten started. They haven't had a lot of their big meets yet, but they do have a lot of seniors this year. We have grad student Luke Uchuzer-Akowski. We've got the Mancini twins. Well, they're juniors, but still a lot of that upperclassman presence. And as good as they've all been, you definitely want to get that recruiting aspect, get some underclassmen, get some more freshmen in to really bolster that team, because this team has really been a force to be reckoned with over these past 4 or 5 years. So you definitely want to get that new talent in there. And speaking of new talent, that kind of gives a perfect segue into lacrosse. They brought in 9 freshmen. There are 3 players that are returning who redshirted because of the COVID year. And even though lacrosse hasn't had the best of seasons recently, it's really good to see that they brought in so much young talent, so much new talent, and that they have that returning experience. So a lot of LaSalle teams have kind of done better than expected. So hopefully lacrosse can kind of be that same deal this season.
Yeah, and let's go over to my favorite thing to talk about, which is golf. The good news for the men's and the women's team is that everybody's returning. We had a fall season as well, so we're just going into spring, and that is our huge competition season. The women have their MAC conference tournament in Florida, and the men are going to go to A10s also in Florida. A big change for the teams this year is we are going more to the West Coast. We always stay in Jersey and in Philly, kind of close, but since the caliber of our program has increased, we're getting invited to a lot more tournaments. So this year we really are going out west. The women are going to Las Vegas for their spring break trip and tournament, and the men are going to Oregon and Arizona. Playing in the West is so much more fun. The ball travels further. There's not as much humidity, not as much wind. So hopefully both teams are looking to capitalize on good fall seasons and really improve in the spring and get some top finishes when in the tournaments that really matter. Switching over to water polo, they are third currently in the preseason ranking. We were talking about them a little bit earlier. Yeah. Coach Hyam, his daughter from Bucknell, grad transfer, Kalista Hyam, is back. She's coming to Lasalle. Should be a cool dynamic and a good leadership position for her just to kind of help the younger teammates along.
Absolutely, and that's a really good balance that a lot of teams have, but definitely very exciting for golf now that we have Livy here to give us a first-hand look inside of the golf program. But water polo is especially interesting because, you know, the men's program did get cut when the 7 programs got cut early last year. So it's really interesting to see how they're able to kind of carry that water polo program just, you know, themselves. You know, they're nationally ranked. They've consistently done well, so it's not something that we're too worried about, but it's just going to be interesting to see how they kind of carry the program now. They're the kind of only ones that are going to be, you know, doing the water sports as the spring comes around. Yeah, again, third in the preseason poll is a great place to be, and we're just hoping they can stay at that caliber and at that level and perform really well this season. And I'm really excited because, you know, track and field and the 4 other sports are going to give us a lot to talk about, even though the numbers might not seem big. So it's going to be an exciting spring season, no matter what. Definitely a lot less hectic than the spring season where we had all the sports happening at once. But that just about wraps it up for us this week. If you can't make it out to see the Explorer Report, be sure to tune in next week for our coverage. Keep up with this weekend's other sporting events by visiting goexplorers.com. You can also check out the digital edition of the Collegian, which now features SportsLine content. Also check us out on Facebook at facebook.com/Lasalle TV and on Instagram at SportsLine LTV. We welcome you to send us your thoughts and suggestions there. This week's poll is, which fact about me from my teaser was the lie? Definitely that you play golf. Livy's obviously basketball, duh. But for our entire SportsLine team, I'm Siobhan Nolan. And I'm Livy Gilliland. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you at the game.